I heard a story about this kind of Belfast hard man who fought a few powers, and then they kind of got sick of getting bait, so they got one of their champions over, like from Germany, to literally take him on in the street. Can you tell us that story, please?
Well, that story is very, very true, and it's incredible. It's just an amazing story. Uh, there's people still alive who were there, who witnessed it. And my dad knocked out a few paras. He knocked out a few IRA men too, but mostly paras, and they couldn't get one to beat him. So they flew a regimental boxing champion over from Germany to challenge my dad. And yeah, as I say, there's people still alive who witnessed it. And there's contradictory talk that he Judas Madawi, a knuckle duster. There's some people say that was true, and there's other people say no, there was no knuckle duster. But he had a few dust ups with paratroopers and British Army. So yeah, so the guy hit my dad first, I believe, and dropped my dad. But my dad got up and gave him a vicious beating. And after that, the powers respected him, revered him even. And on the gable wall in Herbert Street the next day, it says Coco rules the Paras. And then all them years later, when I got the ABA boxing final, 1985, I come up against a paratrooper and I knocked him out in 2 rounds, broke his nose in 3 places. And graffiti went up in Ardoyne, McAuley's 2, Paras nil. Couldn't make it up.
That's funny. How did it come about that he got into these initial fights with the Paras?
Oh, because my dad ruled Ardoyne. As some people say, him and your dad ruled Belfast, ruled the town. But my dad was the man, was well known for being a very, very hard man. I'm not a hard man, never was, never will be, and wouldn't want to be. But my dad was much bigger than me. He was actually smaller in height, but in width, he was massive arms, massive shoulders, massive everywhere. Just he wasn't that tall, but he was very, very thick. Yeah, yeah. So amazing. He had many to dust up with IRA men too, and they were going to wipe him out. They tried to wipe him out in Pilot Street in 1972 or 1973. He was coming out of a bar, and it was a personal vendetta. I think I know the guy who he's long dead now. Tried to kill my father, but my father was shot in the foot and shot in the stomach, but he survived. And then he was shot in the Avenue Bar in 1988. He was shot through the shoulder, lower shoulder, and 3 colleagues died in that cowardly attack by Loyalists. And then my dad was there on the day the first Loyalist bomb at a Republican funeral went off in Atna Drive in Ardoyne, and my dad's car was parked opposite it. So my dad's car took the full blast. The car with the bomb in it was obliterated. And there's photos. You haven't seen the photos, have you not, of the car my dad came out of?
No.
Oh, all right. I must send them to you. But how my dad ever came out of that car alive is unbelievable. It is incredible. His car was all crumpled up, but the car with a bomb in it, which was parked directly opposite, was obliterated. The steering wheel was found in Haybray Gardens, and a guy, Sean Campbell, who was killed, his head was blew clean off into a garden. But yeah, and then my father killed a fella in Camden Town in the late 70s, early 80s. So he did have a really brutal life. And the IRA beat his hands with a hammer, multiple fractures and lacerations. See, they wouldn't take him on man to man, but they try to shoot him, stuff like that. They
Yeah.
wouldn't take him on man to man. The Loyalists, the British Army, or the Republicans. He's still undefeated. See,
Yeah.
yeah, my dad would have went into bars and clubs, and people would have challenged him. They got drinking, which gives you Dutch courage, as they say, and they would have, challenged my dad and stuff. I'd done his hair in, but he'd have brought it back to the house and would have started with my mom and would have been abusive and stuff like that. But I never walked a mile in his shoes. It mustn't have been easy for him to get picked on, to get. But yeah, I believe if my father had never drank, he'd have been a great man. He had a great personality, a great wit, and people still talk about him today, about how funny he could be, But his uncle, Rinty Monaghan, was world flyweight boxing champion way back in the 40s. And my dad's father, Harry McAuley, my granddad, was a professional pugilist. He was Northern Ireland area flyweight champion, which he won over 15 rounds against Billy Dantley. So the fighting was well ingrained in my father. He had it from his mother's side and his father's side. So in horse racing terms, he would have been known as a thoroughbred.
Let me bring us back to your dad there. We obviously talked about his run-ins with the Paras, but like you said, he at various stages got shot by the IRA and also the Loyalists. Can you tell us about how we ended up beefing with these particular Republicans?
Oh, yeah. Yes. When my daddy was shot, yeah, he was coming out of the Dockers, and just we know who. We're pretty certain. We're pretty certain we know who it was, and it was a personal vendetta. It wasn't sanctioned by the IRA. And when my dad got his hands beat years later, 1989, I believe, 88 or maybe a wee bit later, multiple fractures and lacerations. The IRA beat his hands by a hammer because he was suspected of pushing a Republican's wife, which he didn't. But it was this one man done it of his own bat. I was told that the IRA didn't sanction it. But as I say, when I went up to Dundonald to visit him, and veteran Republican Martin Meekin was there, and Martin Meekin cried. My dad was Martin's mate, and Martin cried when he seen my dad's two hands extended up in the air. And yeah, there was a lot of bad things done on him. And as I say, he killed a fella in Camden Town in a street fight. Uh, the guy died, and my dad had to come home because up until the last breath he took, he could have been done for it. But apparently, they had an argument in the bar, and my dad went into the toilet. And the guy followed my dad into the toilet to pursue the argument that they had in the bar, and my dad hit him. And my dad walked out of the bar, not realizing he'd killed the guy. Did he die? Did his head hit the ceramic floor? Did he have a heart attack? Did he have a brain bleed? I don't know how the guy died. I believe he might have been American, but and the headlines, not the headlines, the story in the newspapers the next day, the Camden Town Echo or the Camden Town Gazette, whatever one it has, we still have it somewhere. It said that the police were looking for a man with a Scottish or Northern Ireland accent with massive arms. And my dad did have massive, massive arms. He was a very, very, very strong, well-built guy, well put together guy.
He also, you said in the book, he also ended up in some kind of a dispute with this well-known IPLO fella called Martin.
Right. My dad was in a bar, Monaghan's bar, owned by the other side of his family. See, my dad and his mother's side was Monaghan. So his cousins owned the bar. It was called the White Horse, and then it was changed to Monaghan's Bar. My dad was there one day on his own, having a quiet drink, minding his own business when the IPLO came in. And they picked him a fella. And going by Michael Monaghan, my dad's cousin, my dad was knocking them about like 10 pence. And my dad was well past his best then. My dad was knocking them about like 10, but it was too many of them. And they were going to shoot him dead. So they give him a bad beating. And my dad, the blood was pissing out of my dad, but he finished his pint and he went to the hospital and got stitches. And I was boxing in London a couple of days later, but they hid my dad's injuries. My family hid my dad's injuries to me, and they prevented me from calling to the house because they didn't want to upset me 2 days before I was to have my 10th professional contest in London. So they didn't want me to see his face. His face was all busted up. And as I say, that was just an ego trip. And it was Martin Rook O'Prey, who was one of the ringleaders. And a couple of weeks later, my dad was having a drink in the Dock Workers Club in Pilot Street when Rook O'Prey, Geek Donnelly and their crowd came in. And they went to my dad. And Rook O'Prey said to my dad, well, if you want to sort this out, we'll go outside and sort it out. But my dad looked around at all his backends and knew that it wasn't going to be a fair fight. So my dad says, listen, son, I'm getting too old for this. And Rook O'Prey put his hand out. He says, well, we'll just shake hands on it. And my dad shook his hand, knowing that they would all jump him if he went outside.